Hey folks, Green Stuff Gav here. This week we've got a painting tutorial. Is as requested by Glowboy on the Marching Miniatures Discord. For those who don't know, I've printed and painted a Chibi Sisters of Battle Army. For those not knowing, Chibi is referred to as a childlike design in a lot of anime and manga, and Marching Miniatures alongside Impact Miniatures have done a fantastic range of not 40k miniatures, all in the Chibi style. And I've painted a whole army's worth. And here's an example of one of the Imperial Guards that I've painted for them. And you probably can't see, but there's some painting chibi eyes is always, with chibis with the big eyes, is always a very expressive part of the miniature. And so today we're just going to spend some time, show a couple of examples how I paint them, because the way you paint the eyes always defines a miniature. Sort of its expression all comes into the eyes. So I've printed off and started painting a couple of miniatures. Again, this is for March, and this one is one of their Sister of Battle miniatures using the Builder Sibling kit. As you can see, I've just gone from a skin tone and painted the eyes white. And this is from I can't even pronounce his name, the sculptor's own My Mini Factory, which will be linked below, where he offers loads of free miniatures. And again, just a skin tone and eyes on this one, so we can do a couple of examples. Now, eyes are always a very daunting part of the miniature, so I tend to get a basic skin colour around, get the eyes white, and then spend some time, because you want to get the eyes are always a focal point. So from however you choose to do it, I start with Astronomic and Grey and work it up to White Scar. But we're going to start with some black. Now, where you put the iris affects a lot of the pose of a miniature. So for example, this one is looking off to the left, because that's where you're following where her focal point is with the teapot. Whereas this one, she's focused on the nice bit of toast she's eating, so her irises are pointing down. And I've gone for a lot of white coverage around the outside because that gives a staring effect. So for example, with this one, we'll do a standard eye. All we're going to do is do a nice, gets a bit more water, talked a bit long, nice thin black, and just define the edge of where the eye wants to be. So here I haven't quite gone all the way to the skin, left a tiny bit of white, you can see there, and that gives a bit more of a staring look, a very focused look. And the hard part for painting any eyes is symmetry, so it's very difficult with the camera in the way. But all we want to do is just duplicate the eye, so the same distance, same size, so it looks like she's looking straight. I'll touch more black on that. Now the reason we're doing black first is because we can go back over with white to tidy up if it isn't quite in the right place, and also when we come to add the colour, that'll give us edge. So instead of having to sit down and try and draw around to define edges, we're starting with that definition and bulking it out. So again, we can see just by leaving it black like that, you can see there's a little bit white coming around, gives her a very focused look. Obviously she's got her pistol out, she's looking. Now what I was saying about the how much white is around the eyes will affect. So for example, on this one I'm going to do two different eyes, so it'll look a bit weird, but if I was to do a standard eye, you go all the way, just as simple as that. That's a standard eye, as you would any other miniature. However, if you're looking for something, say a furious warrior or someone's glaring, you would reduce the eye to make it much smaller, and this affects the look of the miniature. All we're looking to keep it round, so that is a very staring eyeball, for example. Obviously it looks a bit strange with the other one, so you've got a staring vision or a normal eye. So we're just going to bulk that out because that's really distracting. And again, we're going all the way to the edges with this one. Now there's many, it's always worth looking for how to draw manga books, because they put a lot of focus on the eyes, and again with the Chibi style it's very following the this style of illustration, and that's all we're doing here. So 2 eyes, just standard ones. Now you can leave it just like that. I tend to leave any male characters just like that because a lot of the anime and manga you just see pure black irises. However, for anything else, we're going to add a touch of colour. So I've got Games Workshop's Warpstone Glow here. We're going to have nice green eyes on this lady. So I'm going to get a touch of this. Again, you don't need a lot, because all we're going to do is just around the outside, so not all the way to the edge, because we're going to leave a touch of black. That paint's a little bit too watery. As mentioned, I always water my paints in the bottles, so I don't have to add a lot of water to them. Again, we're going to just go almost to the edge and leave that black line around the outside, because this will save having to come back later and go back over. That's one way of doing it. So from there we'll get our black back out. Now thankfully it's still very humid in the UK, so paint's drying quite quick. Then all we're going to do is add the black right from the centre of the eye, leaving a bit of colour and then a bit of black on the outside. And again, just trying to make sure that the details are the same on each eye. Don't know, you can see that, but you've got a small bit of black and then a bit of colour around the outside. And to follow it off, very straightforward, very simple, is we're going to take a touch of white scar, just a tiny bit on a brush, and just add a bit of a white reflection. I always tend to put them in the same spot at the top left, but you can change them, put them wherever is appropriate to your highlight. So if you're doing a light source coming from one side, that's where you put the light. If it's coming from above, that's where you put it. That is the first way of how I do it. Very straightforward. Now the opposite to that, the other way of doing it, which we'll demonstrate on this young lady, is, so instead of covering the whole eye, you can just paint your colour on. But I find this, you've still got to go in and tidy up the black, so that's not quite as useful a technique. Now, if you've got much better eyesight than I have, or a much better painter, you can then use your blending techniques. So while that's still wet, Zotac Green's given up. So that's gone from a Crag Blue. We're going to take a touch of Zotac Green, or your blue of highlight choice. And while it's still wet, we're just going to blend from the top, because that gives you a lighter colour at the top down to the darker at the bottom. And then while that dries, we're going to follow the same procedure. Just tidy up the inside of the eye, the black part, which is actually a hole in your eyeball. And then follow up with a touch of white as per the other. Again, as long as you're consistent, it doesn't matter whether you do a line all the way across the eyeball or pick out 3 lines or whatever. So long as you're consistent across the army, it'll still look fine across all of your models. Now from this point I tend to go in with a bit of black and just tidy up the edges of the eyes, but thankfully where we've been quite straightforward, we don't really need to go into them. That is how I do chibi eyes. So I'll link the gallery down below of all of the miniatures I've done for my Sister of Battle army, as well as the Discord where you can join and they give away free models to print. There's plenty there if you really want to do some chibi style miniatures. But as always, thank you for watching, and remember, have fun.